I'm really glad still that I started therapy before the world happened, before 2020 happened. It's interesting because I think back to when I started going to therapy, and I'm looking back at it now, and I'm realizing how much more of a crisis I was in than I think I even knew at the time. And there were some really urgent things that I wasn't able to do, or where my life was impacted. I was losing my weekends, I think, to OCD. I thought at the time, I know that I, my life is being impacted. I'm losing days of my weekend to this. It's impacting my relationships. I'll learn some coping techniques, and then I'll be done. It's not really what happened, and I'm glad that's not what happened. So that's where, looking back, I had those urgent things to deal with, and I'm still feeling really good about kind of like lower anxiety levels. I don't feel like I'm in crisis anymore. For a while, it felt like a little roller coaster. Like I would have a good week and a bad week and a good week and a bad week. Um, and I feel like things have evened out. I'm starting to notice some other places that OCD is impacting my life, whether that's my job and some dynamics in my relationships with people around me, um, that are less obvious, like less obviously OCD, less obviously compulsive, um, and a little bit more pernicious maybe for that, and harder to spot and harder to notice. And if it's not, I'm not losing a whole weekend day to spiraling about laundry. Like that's a pretty obvious example of OCD. But when it's something that's really tied up in my feelings of over responsibility, the urgent feeling that I might get based on a conversation with somebody in my life, feelings of uncertainty, all of those are harder to notice. A lot of my life was spent avoiding those feelings. And I couldn't anymore. Like the whole point of this is to confront them, to lean into them, to embrace them, to acknowledge how I'm feeling, and for me, also build compassion for myself, that I have them. And at first, I mean, for a long time, probably for 6 months, maybe longer, um, that compassion was not there, and that's where in a bad week, I think that's what drove the bad week, and that's what drove when it's coming up like, this is always going to be here. I'm always going to be like this. There's a lot of like self-loathing kind of wrapped into that, and um, yeah, the lack of compassion for myself is where I was seeing that in particular.
Looking at the more subtle and pernicious, as you said, which I really like, parts of OCD maybe don't cause you clinically significant distress, so they might not be the reasons that you'd come into therapy in the first place. But once you're in therapy, from my perspective, it's really a gift to yourself to continue to work on those more subtle parts of your life, because once you start seeing the patterns and you apply them in every area of your life, you just get more and more freedom to live according to your values and to get less stuck in your mind and in your behavior less often. Any amount of observing yourself and practicing a friendly and compassionate attitude is going to help you notice your triggers, notice your thoughts, notice what you're doing in response, and have more options for what to do differently. So really, anything you can do to take that stance is totally good enough, and you should meet yourself exactly where you are. And so, Liz, I think you did a great job turning into, like, personifying it and turning it into a game first, and that helped you just, again, like, notice the moment it was happening. And I think also the therapy process, as you're describing, one of the main roles of therapy is when it's hard to observe your own experience on your own, then the therapist can help you identify moments in your life where you're getting stuck and what's happening when you're getting stuck. And like, you don't have to be doing that alone.
I think it was that progression of like actually saying out loud, and it's okay, to putting in an app and feeling proud about it, to being. I feel like journaling is like the next evolution of that, where I'm sitting with it, a little bit more fully, and more than just the app where it's like I notice it and I log it and I get a point for it and I feel proud for getting that point and for noticing it. I am, like I said, it's the processing feelings journal. So I think that I am able to sit with it even further, where I can think through some of the dynamics that are driving that feeling a little bit more.
I imagine rather than just I'm noticing something uncomfortable, you're probably noticing nuance. So you're feeling
Mhm.
uncertain, but you're maybe also feeling guilt and shame. You're also feeling anger and resentment. You realize like maybe some of the feelings that you're having are coming from other people. They're not just your own feelings. So all of that is a really big opportunity when you're writing things out, particularly on a regular basis. You can see patterns over time, and it more
Yeah.
quickly can be like, oh, whenever I'm in this meeting, I always feel this kind of way.